EUB343 Assessment Task 2. Hello, my name is Chantel Blanche and my student number is N9970380. My tutors are Chris Blundell and Danielle Gordon. I attend the Thursday workshop from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. My PEC school was a foundation to Year 6 co-educational school. It was in a low socio-economic status area. I was in a Year 3 classroom that consisted of 23 students. It was a mixed ability class. My focus was on Year 3 mathematics. The content descriptor from Year 3, number and algebra, fractions and decimals, was model and represent unit fractions including 1/2, 1/4, 1/3, 1/5, and their multiples to a complete whole. My key learning intention was to understand parts of a fraction and how to represent fractions in multiple ways. Diagnostic and formative assessment were integral to student learning during my professional experience. Diagnostic assessment provides a student's current knowledge and understanding regarding a topic as well as existing misconceptions. Formative assessment, on the other hand, should be ongoing in order to identify the progression of students' understanding and knowledge of a topic. Formative assessment also allows for small group instruction and explicit teaching to take place for those students who require extra assistance. Hattie and Timperley's formative assessment system encompasses 3 components: feed up, feed back, and feed forward. Feed up ensures that the purpose of the task or unit is communicated to students so they have an understanding. It involves students asking, "Where am I going?" Feedback consists of students acquiring information about their learning success and needs. Here is where students ask, "How am I doing?" Feed forward guides the learning of students, which is based on performance data. Students now ask, "Where am I going next?" All 3 components are integral for high levels of learning to be achieved by students. It is important for students to understand the learning intentions and success criteria prior to commencing each lesson. This enables students to work towards their academic goal. Here is the diagnostic assessment that I created for my Year 3 class to gauge their prior knowledge and understanding of fractions. It consisted of 9 questions. This is the whole class diagnostic assessment results. There's a key. 1 means that they got the question correct, and 0 means that they got the question incorrect. There's also a percentage correct row down the bottom for each question. Here is the individual assessment results. There's a total items score column and a percentage correct column for each student regarding each question. A common misconception identified is students thinking that the numerator and denominator are 2 unrelated independent numbers. Here, students are not grasping the aspect that the parts need to be equal. I chose 2 students. This is Students 1 diagnostic assessment results. They got 2 questions correct. I also chose Student 13. Here, Student 13 also got 2 questions correct on their diagnostic assessment. Student 1 and 13 have an understanding that a fraction has a numerator and denominator, however do not have the knowledge of what they represent. Question 2 and 5 show that these students do not understand that the denominator is how many equal parts there are altogether. In a simple question that is asking what 1/2 of something is, both students are able to successfully do this. I made an anchor chart for parts of a fraction and presented this to the students after completing their diagnostic assessment. I explained what the numerator is and what the denominator of a fraction is. Students had to work out the numerator and denominator of the fractions at the bottom of the anchor chart. I physically got the students to come up and write them in. I also created an anchor chart for ways to represent fractions. Before introducing this, I always recapped on parts of a fraction prior to commencing new content in order to consolidate their learning. I explained the different ways to represent a fraction. However, students were focusing on representing a fraction in the form of a word, part of a whole, and part of a set. At the beginning of each lesson, there was always a recap on both of the anchor charts I had created to refresh the students' minds. Formative assessment strategy 1 was a think board. Think boards allow students to visually represent their ideas and understandings in different ways. Students used a think board for the purpose of representing fractions in the form of a word, part of a whole, and part of a set. In doing this, students had to use their acquired knowledge of parts of a fraction to complete the task successfully. During the task, students used counters as a concrete manipulative to support them when modelling and organising their ideas for parts of a set. Here is a student example of a think board. There was a common misconception that a triangle could be split into 3 equal parts. Feedback was provided to the students on this misconception. I stopped the class and explicitly went back and taught the aspect of fractions needing to have equal parts. Following this, feed forward was given as I questioned the students on what type of shapes can be used to represent 1/3 and why that is. My formative assessment strategy 2 was a Plickers set of questions. The students participated in these questions 1 to 5, as you can see on the screen. Plickers is a formative assessment tool which is time and cost effective. Here are the results of the students' answers. Plickers provided instant feedback to both the students and myself. Some students were not grasping the questions being asked. Therefore, explicit instruction and explanation of each question was provided. The students then completed the set of questions again. Here are the results from completing the questions again. So it's obvious that student 12, 16, and 17 still did not understand a question or two. I worked with these 3 in a small group in the afternoon where I was able to give further examples and explanation of each question. When providing feedback, the teacher examines work for an understanding of the topic. Often, additional instructions are provided to those students who have difficulties, therefore feeding forward until an understanding of the content is achieved. My formative assessment strategy 3 was fraction word problems. The questions were split up and cut up according to the complexity level. The purpose of providing students with levels of complexity was designed to increase their mathematical learning and skills for different ability levels. Students had the opportunity to work with their elbow partner or someone close by. In doing so, students were enabled to share and extend their understanding and thinking as they were encouraged to work collaboratively. As I walked around the room, feedback on particular questions were provided and students received feed forward through prompts and questioning. This is student 1 and student 13's artifact of answering the questions. This task gave me an indication of what students could do in terms of solving fraction word problems as I walked around the class monitoring them. I was able to give whole class feedback after the completion of this task, where we worked through the problems as a class highlighting the key information in each problem. I found that this was an effective strategy, as students who struggled to do them when I was monitoring were now able to complete them confidently. Formative assessment strategy 4 was a fraction puzzle that I made up. 20 out of 23 students got all 5 correct. This fraction puzzle was an educational game that provided the opportunity to embed formative assessment. This is formative assessment strategy 5 and was the final formative assessment that the students completed. Here are the whole class formative assessment results. Question 6 involves the concept of money, which students struggled with. The percentage correct for each question is displayed down the bottom. Here are the individual formative assessment results. There is the total items score column and a percentage correct column displayed again. Here you can see the drastic improvement in students' results from their diagnostic assessment to their final assessment in terms of fractions. This is Student 1's formative assessment. Student 1 got all of their questions correct. Student 1 diagnostic assessment was 22%, in comparison to their formative assessment where they got 100%. Here is Student 13's formative assessment results. Student 13 got 2 questions incorrect. In the diagnostic assessment, Student 13 got 22%, however in the formative assessment, they got 78% correct. Looking at the comparison, there is still an increase in achievement. Throughout my professional experience, I used a range of informal and formal diagnostic and formative assessments to gauge students' understanding of the content being taught. For the focus of fractions in mathematics, I had to revisit and explicitly teach the basics. I also used concrete manipulatives to assist students who needed visual representations, as well as those who didn't. Throughout my formative assessments, I was able to see an increase in student performance as their ability to represent fractions in multiple ways has increased significantly. In my future professional experience, there are a few aspects I want to implement. Integrating more ICT into my teaching sequence in order to provide students with a different way of learning and to potentially increase student engagement. I want to tailor lessons around student interests and continue to track student progress and represent data to provide a visual representation of the results. In doing so, this enables me to adjust my pedagogical teaching practices and resources to accommodate students' different learning abilities. Thank you for listening.